Okay, good evening all, and Happy New Year to you all, and good to see you all here braving the rain and all that, and we'll look at a few things in the sky. A few things you can see. And first of all, let's start off with the topic of the moment. This is the comet that's in the sky, Comet Lovejoy, Terry Lovejoy from Australia's 5th discovery. And this is a picture I took of it just over my house. It's low down, Orion is sort of up here somewhere, and we'll have a look at a map of where to see it. But you can see the characteristic green colour there and a nice sort of fuzzy look to it. It is now about 4th magnitude, so you should be able to see it naked eye from a good sight. And we'll find a map shortly. This is Andy's photograph taken through a telescope on the 3rd of January. And you can see the definite green colour. I would say you can see where there might be the beginnings of a bit of a tail there, Andy, but the trouble with this is that we've had recently the moonlight, and the moonlight has blotted out a lot of the detail of it, and you can't get past that. Here's the good news: the moon is on the way out of the picture now. If we look at this in a week's time, we should get a better view of it. Not only that, it's rising much higher in the sky as well. There's some other views that are coming in from the internet. This was Nick Howes used a remote telescope network in Australia to get this picture, and you can see very definitely there it's got a huge tail on it. How he got rid of the moonlight, I don't know. That's they still have moonlight in Australia as far as I can tell as well, but it seems that it's obviously a stack of many images as well. That you see the stars move, and it's actually the comet that moves more relative to the starry background here, so it looks like all the stars are moving, so you've done a good job of tracking the comet on that one. And another one I've got today, this again is use a telescope from somewhere else and with a better sky than you've got. And this guy used one in Namibia, in Southern Africa, and again it's got this beautiful photo. It's not the real nucleus, it's what they call the false nucleus, but it's because the actual comet is much smaller than that. And this beautiful tail here. That's actually you splice together 2 images there to fit all that in. That's several degrees of tail on there. So that's Comet Lovejoy. And what I'm sure you all want to know is, where can I see it? And actually it's quite easy to find. Here is Orion. So anytime really after it gets dark, in the south, east to south, Betelgeuse, Rigel, to roughly similar brightness but very different coloured stars. You start looking down at Rigel and go to the west or the right of Rigel, and here we are. This is the track through the sky. The 7th of January today, the comet is at its closest to Earth, which isn't necessarily the brightest, because it's actually the perihelion in relation to the sun is round about the 30th, and anywhere along this path it should be pretty bright and easy to see. But here we are at the 7th. This is the constellation Eridanus, a very often overlooked constellation, but I'll show you something about Eridanus in a moment. It's a hugely long constellation called the River, and it wanders down and down and down and down. It's all quite insignificant until you get to the far end. And the trouble with the far end is that you have to be at a latitude kind of south of the Caribbean to see it. But there's a wonderful bright star at the end of Eridanus called Achernar, and that's one of the brightest stars in the southern sky. And if you ever find yourself in the southern hemisphere, I'll ask Kate about this for a moment. So, if you find yourself in the southern sky and you want to find what direction is south, you have no south pole star. But if you do take the 2 brightest stars in that region of the sky, Canopus and Achernar, and form an actual triangle between the 2, and that's about where the south pole is. But Achernar is the brightest star in Eridanus, and it's right down there somewhere. Very long, meandering constellation. But the comet, I digress, is currently in the river to the west of Rigel and rising higher and higher. So it'll come up towards Aldebaran and the Hyades, and then be to the right of the 7 Sisters. And it should be pretty bright all the time. And as the moon gets out of the way, and hopefully even the weather gets better, who knows, then we should get some really good looks at Comet Lovejoy. So that's the comet. I did promise you just a little addendum. This is I started looking around the stars very long, so I've never really looked at them before because it's a fairly insignificant thing, and I looked up this one, and the comet sort of came by here, and about tonight, in fact, it's approximately there. And there is a star called 40 Eridani. It's a very interesting star, because In Star Trek, that's the Vulcan sun, and that's where the people that we first meet in 2061, according to Star Trek, come from planet Vulcan. Now, it is actually quite an ordinary star, very similar to our sun, a little bit dimmer. It's about a magnitude 4 star in the sky. It's 16 light years away, so that means it's intrinsically just a little bit more dim than our sun, similar sort of spectrum. And here's an interesting thing about it astronomically. If you've never seen a white dwarf, it has a white dwarf partner, and it's easier to see than Sirius or Procyon B, which is the easiest white dwarf to see in the sky. So there's a little aside brought about by me looking at a comet. Okay, there's some planets in the sky. In fact, in the evenings now, if you look to the west, as soon as the sun sets, don't try looking before the sunset, but after sunset, you'll see both Mercury and Venus coming up. And actually for the next sort of few days or so, they come up together and they do a little dance around the sky, and then Mercury will recede back into the sunset, whereas Venus goes on to higher and brighter things after that. So two evening planets, and a bit further above and to the left of those two planets, you may also see Mars. Mars is still quite prominent, never really quite went away, but Mars is there, looking good. Jupiter just gets brighter and brighter. Jupiter is up by to the right of Leo. It's actually moving away from Regulus again. We talked about this last time, that it's in its retrograde motion and now moving back towards the beehive sort of direction, but it looks quite spectacular with Leo in the sky. You can apparently see Saturn in the mornings, though I haven't done yet. It is still quite low down in the mornings. We should get to see a bit more of Saturn as the months go on. And Uranus and Neptune in Pisces and Aquarius still visible, slightly both past their best now. They were better a couple of months ago, but they're looking pretty good still. Now, so there we are. This is the map of Mercury and Venus. So we're sort of, well, Mercury's there, and actually Venus is a little bit higher above it. And I've actually got a photograph that John McConnell sent in, and John managed to capture both planets last night, just after sunset. There's Venus, there's Mercury, and I think that's an exercise in patience. That one, just waiting for the two bands of clarity to come to the right place to get the picture. But that's a great shot from John. Solar cycle 24 goes on. Peter did send me a couple of pictures. Peter sends his apologies. He's not terribly well, unfortunately, so he sends his apologies to the meeting tonight. But he did manage to get some pictures yesterday. This is yesterday's sun, and most of interest here is active region 2253, which is quite close to us. That's the best one on the sun at the minute. There's nothing there radically likely to explode anytime soon, but that has got the potential for some M-class flares possibly in it. But that's not what happened today. You've got a calcium picture as well, and again you can see the structure of that main area 2253 there. And also something interesting coming around the corner by the look of it. So I haven't seen that develop into anything, but there should be a new sunspot group coming round the limb there. Now then, what's happened today? I'll just talk you through this. There are no promises here because I don't know what's going to happen. But this is all earlier today. And about 8 o'clock this morning, our time, something unexpected hit the Earth. And I've variously seen two accounts saying, one that it's something spewing out of a coronal hole, and another says that it's an unexpected coronal mass ejection that was expected to miss us completely, has actually struck us. Anyway, the bad news is that the people who've really got the best of this are in Alaska and northern Canada, as usual. But this has sparked off this here where the planetary K index has reached over 7, and it sparked off a G3 class geomagnetic storm. The latest I looked on the phone just before we came here, and it seems to have mostly died down now. It may kick off again, and as it happens, our skies seem to be clearing a little bit as well. So I think it's probably worth having a look later. Just all of these pictures are on our website, and they're on that page there. called irishastro.org/current, and all of these pictures in updated form are there just to give you a little quick guide to what you need to look at. There's a few things. First of all, look for red on this chart here. Anything over 6 means there's potential for aurora displays to be visible as far south as where we are. However, that in itself is not enough. This here is the output of a magnetometer in Lancaster, in England, and actually that's at a lower latitude than we are. So even if that doesn't look fantastic, we might be able to see things here. Actually, had it not been daylight at this point, that would have been very promising. But the day, this is really happening over here. The overall thing to look at here is the red line, and if the red line comes to sort of within the top part of the United Kingdom, there you can probably see something from a clear sky and a dark site. And the other thing to check, and this is the important one, have you ever heard of a thing called BZ? It's the direction of the magnetic field. If it's pointed north, it blows the aurora away, and if it's pointed south, it sucks the aurora in. And that's represented on this graph here, and you really want that arrow to be pointed downwards. It doesn't really matter too much by how much it's pointed downwards, as long as the general direction is south. So those are things to look at, and they are all, if you go to the observing tab on our webpage, then there's a drop-down menu, and there's one that says current conditions, and you just hit that, and it brings up a page with all those pictures updated on. So no promises, but I will be looking out when I go home after this meeting, and there's no point in going early because we need to stay and listen to John, obviously. So that's all I have to say.
Sorry,
I think.
Paul, could you just ask, is that data specifically for Belfast, or is that generic?
That's
for example, the magnetic field component. That's
all generic. That's because all this is for the planet Earth, basically.
Yeah, that's fine.
Now that one comes from Lancaster, so it's not specific to Belfast, but it's fairly specific to United Kingdom and our sort of latitude.
Yeah.
So if that's kicking off, then it stands a chance that we're in a good place. But this you can obviously see we're here, and but that's a whole Earth thing. So no promises, but I will be having a look. So just one more thing. There is observing Delamont, not this coming weekend, but the following weekend, Friday 16th and 17th, weather permitting, just to see our web forum to see if that's going ahead. So that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Right, Paul, thank you.